President Donald Trump said Wednesday that the United States has seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela as tensions mount with the government of President Nicolás Maduro. According to Associated Press, using U.S. forces to seize an oil tanker is incredibly unusual and marks the Trump administration's latest push to increase pressure on Maduro, who has been charged with narcoterrorism in the United States. The U.S. has built up the largest military presence in the region in decades and launched a series of deadly strikes on alleged drug-smuggling boats in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean. The campaign is facing growing scrutiny from Congress. "We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large, largest one ever seized, actually," Trump told reporters at the White House, later adding that it was seized for a very good reason. When asked what would happen to the oil aboard the tanker, Trump said, "Well, we keep it, I guess." The president said Wednesday that Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky has to be realistic about the war in Ukraine and mused about when Ukraine was next holding elections. The comments came after Trump spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, who discussed Ukraine in pretty strong terms, the U.S. president said. He said European leaders would like a meeting this coming weekend with both the US and Ukraine, and will make a determination depending on what they come back with. In recent days, Trump has been pushing Zelensky to get on board with a proposed peace plan to end the war in Ukraine that Russia started in 2022. "I think he has to be realistic," Trump said of Zelensky Wednesday during a question-and-answer session with reporters. "I do wonder about, how long is it going to be until they have an election?" He later added, "That's not casting dispersions on anybody. But they do have a massive corruption situation going on there."
Mr. President, thank you. Can you explain a little more about this Venezuelan oil tanker and share a little more information?
Well, I'll let the people do it, but you see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now, pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for a very good reason.
The oil tanker, who owns that oil tanker?
You'll get that information later.
Who owns that oil tanker?
You'll get that information later.
Okay, and have you spoken to Maduro since your last conversation?
No, I
It's
haven't.
only been one conversation.
No.
We're interested in the seizure of this tanker. What happens to the oil on that ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You're a good newsman, just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it was going? Was it going to
Follow it.
China?
Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But
Cuba?
we're gonna, I assume we're gonna keep the oil. Yes, please.
You spoke to some European leaders today, I think, sir, about Ukraine.
did.
Could you tell us about that?
The leaders of France, Germany, and UK, all very good leaders, very good friends of mine, and we discussed Ukraine in pretty strong words. And we'll see what happens. I mean, we're waiting to hear answers before we progress. We're not spending any money in Ukraine. We're selling basically missiles and everything else to NATO. And NATO's paying us, and then they distribute it to who they want. I guess they're mostly distributing to Ukraine, but we're not spending money. But we'll find out. Look, there are a lot of things happening right now. A lot of people say it's closer than it's ever been. It's a war that would have never started. If I were president, would have never started. It's a war that should never have started. But we'll have it figured out, I think, within a pretty short
When
time.
you say very strong terms, sir, can you explain that?
Well, I think we had some little disputes about people, and we're going to see how it turns out. And we said before we go to a meeting, we want to know some things. They would like us to go to a meeting over the weekend in Europe, and we'll make a determination depending on what they come back with. We don't want to be wasting time. Sometimes you have to let people fight it out.
And when you say that the European leaders want to have a meeting over the weekend, are you talking about with Zelensky or with them?
With Zelensky.
Um,
With Zelensky. And us.
And you said in an interview yesterday that you think it's time for Zelensky to start accepting things. What things are you talking about?
I think he has to be realistic, and I do wonder about, how long is it going to be till they have an election? It's democracy. It's a long time. They haven't had an election in a long time. It's losing a lot of people. And it's possible that the people, if you look at the polls, I will say 82%, there was a poll came out, 82% of the people are demanding a settlement be made, Ukrainian people. They want to see a settlement be made. I understand that. They're losing thousands and thousands of people a week. They want to see it ended. And I do say, at what point, when do they have an election in Ukraine? That's not casting dispersions on anybody, but they do have a massive corruption situation going on there. And they do say, when are they, people are asking this question, when do they have an election? Are they going to have an election? Or are they going to just keep it going like this? So I think it's time to get that war settled. And I think it's a war that can be settled. But it takes two to tango. So Washington, D.C. is safe, and Memphis is now, look at Memphis, crime is down 60% in Memphis. We just got there 3 weeks ago.
Production of Shahed
Russia on
kamikaze
Wednesday
drones,
said President
making the
Vladimir
complete
Putin had been
destruction
calling on
of their
Ukraine to
production
hold elections
capacity
for
almost
a long
impossible.
time, as
This
Moscow
opinion was
reacted to a statement
expressed
by
on air
Ukrainian
by the
President
reserve major
Volodymyr
of the
Zelensky on
National
holding a
Guard of
possible
Ukraine.
ballot. According to Associated Press, U.S. President Donald Trump repeated his call this week for Ukraine to hold a presidential election even though martial law doesn't allow it, and Zelensky, elected in 2019, had his 5-year term extended because of the conflict. Trump's position on Ukraine's failure to hold an election mirrors frequent statements on the subject by Putin. Responding to Trump's remarks, Zelensky asked for help from the US and possibly Europe to ensure security for the elections, and suggested that Ukraine could be ready to hold balloting in 60 to 90 days. In past comments, Zelensky has declined to hold elections until a ceasefire is declared and martial law lifted, and Ukrainians have largely supported that decision. This is what President Putin has talked about for a long time, Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said in response to Zelensky's statement. This is what President Trump has talked about recently. Therefore, we'll see how things develop in this direction. Peskov also stated Russia had carefully read part of Trump's interview with Politico where he commented on peace talks to end the conflict in Ukraine. In the interview released Tuesday, Trump pressed Zelensky to accept the U.S. proposal that Ukraine cede territory to Russia, arguing Moscow has the upper hand in the fighting and that Zelensky's government must play ball. This is a very important interview, very important statement, Peskov said. It is mostly consonant to our understanding in terms of membership in NATO, in terms of territories, in terms of how Ukraine loses its lands. It is very important in terms of the prospects of a peaceful settlement. On Tuesday, Zelensky reaffirmed his strong refusal to cede any territory.
Обсудить ни с кем не успели. Заявление достаточно новое. Это то, о чем давно, собственно, говорил президент Путин. Это то, о чем совсем недавно говорил президент Трамп. Поэтому посмотрим, как будут развиваться события в этом направлении. Мы работаем над миром, а не над перемирием. Устойчивый, гарантированный, долгосрочный мир, достигнутый за счет подписания соответствующих документов, является абсолютным приоритетом. Безусловно, мы ознакомились очень внимательно с той частью интервью, политика, которая касалась и нас, и тематики украинского регулирования. Это очень важное интервью, очень важное заявление. Во многом по теме членства в НАТО, по теме территории и так далее, по теме того, как Украина теряет земли. Это созвучно нашему пониманию. Во многом президент Трамп затронул как раз и первопричины этого конфликта. Это очень важно с точки зрения перспектив выхода на мирное урегулирование.